we're going to go through this just kind of briefly because I'm going to jump around here. We've talked a little bit about this. 5th century BC, so about 2,500 years ago, 5 centuries before Christ was born. Athens was the political center and cultural center of Western civilization. And organized theaters began to increase. We've talked about what the Greek theater looked like, and that this was the theatron. This is the skene, which is the word that we use now for scene, right? So that's where it came from. These are the parados where the chorus would enter, and that's the orchestra where they would actually perform. And that's kind of the ruins of the one that looks like in Athens. And this is another one that's a little bit better taken care of. Okay, so Rome. You have one like that? Where? In Jordan? Okay, there is a theater like that. I was in a class one time. There's a girl from Croatia. Just sing along. Famrit. There was a girl from Croatia that told me that they also had one there. So these things, were made kind of all over after they were from Greece. They still do theater there? That's concerts. Yeah, symphony and things like that. That's cool. So Rome in Italy or whatever went and conquered Greece. Okay, and then they stole a lot of their ideas. They didn't steal them, they appropriated them, right? They now owned them. Okay, and they went, wow, these traditions are pretty cool. We like this. And so they made their own theater and kind of like one-upped it. All right, so this is what a Roman theater looks like. And notice that they have all the way across the back where the Greek theater was a little more open. I mean, yeah, it was a lot more open. It was out on the, a whole hillside. The Roman theater just built it and made it so that that scenery back there, they could go in and out and they could do a whole lot of things, and they had balconies. And they also made it so that I don't know if I've told you guys this before, but all see these little steps here, these little steps there. Okay, underneath all those steps are holes, are tunnels. They're entrances. And so actors could come out here, could come out here, could come out here, could come out there, and all end up in the middle. And that's called a vomitorium, because it's like it vomits them all out. Gross. But that's what the vomitorium is all those little alcoves and things that are there. All right. So then, after Rome kind of fell, the church didn't like anything to do with anything that wasn't Christian. Okay, so this is in Rome. So they don't want those Roman things anymore. They didn't want the Greek things anymore, because they were all about different gods and things. They were all pagans, right? They completely obliterated it. And for about 1,000 years, there's no written theater. We can't find any written theater, at least in the West. Okay, 1,000 years. That's a long time, guys. That's what they call the Dark Ages. There were no increases in technology. No one, did anything really significant as far as art goes, or machinery, or anything else. We think so, because theater people, we're going to act no matter what. But they were probably little tiny theaters that went around from town to town. Actors, theater people in general, have always been the bottom part, lowest part of the totem pole. It was actors and prostitutes. Okay, they were all lumped together. Okay, and because those people sell themselves, right? And those women, they change in the same tents that the men change in. They must be prostitutes. Okay, so Theater, the church they were in charge of every aspect of life, which is why we have Henry VIII, beheading people, back in that time period, because, the church said he couldn't divorce them. So, but, even that whole time period, the church was everything. I was watching a show. I was watching like Medici. It was about the Medici reign, the Pope that was a Medici. And or there's a few different popes, but basically at one point the church was angry with this guy for whatever he did, and they stopped church services for the whole town. And like the people were like really upset, because at that time they thought if you didn't baptize a baby and it died, that it went into limbo and didn't go to heaven. And so they had no one to baptize their baby. They had no one to marry them. They had no one to, do all these things, and they were incredibly distraught. So, but the church was really powerful in all the aspects in European theater. So theater was initially thought to be evil, okay? And then something interesting happened. There was theater started in a very unlikely place, the church. I don't have it written here, but there was something called the Quemquatorist trope. And I'm not even sure what the definition of a trope is, but basically in the church service, there were three people playing, there was a person playing an angel and three people pretending to be the Marys that go and they find that Jesus' tomb is empty, the three Marys, as they call it. And the angel says to them, why are you here? Whom do you seek? It sings it. And the Marys answer, we seek Jesus. And they answer, he has risen. He is not here. Go and tell the others. That's it. That's the whole thing. And that's how theater started up again. So people really loved it because they were like enacting things. And so the church started doing more liturgical theater. And that's how it kind of emerged again. And then they would do, they're called, cycles. It's like I knew it, I get the, they would do cycles. They would take the stages, that instead of having a theater that you went to, they would build these wagons. And the wagon was, a pretty good size enough for people to stand on and act stage, kind of like what we would, our floats today, right? You go to the parade, you see a float, it was kind of like that. And each of the wagons represented a different part of the Bible. And they would go to the town and they would set these up all around town, and people would, they're a little bit unsure, people would walk from one to the other. I'm guessing that's how it was. Or if they would actually move, and then people would stay in place and they see the next one, But knowing how theater people have to set things up, I'm thinking they made the people move. So there would be one of Adam and Eve. And there'd be a story about that. And there'd be one about, Abraham and Isaac. And there'd be another one about Moses and, parting the Red Sea. And there'd be another one about, the best one was Noah. Okay, that was kind of earlier. But Noah, okay, because Noah, they had contraptions that they would make it rain for like 5 whole minutes. They carried that much water with them to make it rain on stage during the thing. And then the very last one was hell. Okay. And they had a hell mouth. I have some pictures of this one. Okay. So this is one of the wagons. Okay, this is a medieval pageant wagon, and it would go through the town and see be pulled by horses, and they would enact things up here. The hell mouth, it was literally supposed to be the mouth of hell, and it was all decorated ugly, and people got to dress up and dance around as demons, and have a good time. So that's kind of where it went to medieval theater. And this is the brief overview, right? Then we have the Renaissance, and Renaissance actually means rebirth, okay? something was dead and now it has come back to life. And during the Renaissance, it was like there was 1,000 years of nothing, and then blah, huge things happened in theater and in music and in art and in technical things. Leonardo da Vinci was not just a painter, but he was also an inventor, and he has all these designs for catapults and all sorts of machinery, which later he was really sorry he made because it started more wars, but it made war worse. But the Italian Renaissance was huge, and Italy really, they had the longest period of what we call the Renaissance. And it was not known for great literary achievements during the Renaissance. That was really England. That's where Shakespeare comes in. But their visual arts, their painting, their drawing, their sculpture, their architecture, and everything was huge. That's another Leonardo da Vinci, trying to see what man looked like, what people look like. Okay, I'm trying to scroll down here. That's all right. We'll just keep up with the overview, and we'll go and look at some of the videos. The Teatro Olimpico was the first indoor theater, right? So the other ones are outside. They used the sun. They didn't really have lighting, right? So this one was the first indoor theater. It was designed by Palladio, and it utilized the concept of force perspective. Force perspective, we talked about this, right? A little bit of the force perspective where where they had the poles and chariots where everything moved off stage and moved on stage, and you could see this looks further away than that did. So this was the first time that they used it, and they really, really used it. They went crazy over it. They did all sorts of shows, and you can see the theaters even built around making that force perspective happen behind them, and then the actors would act here. This one's the Teatro Farnese. This is built in 1618, and it's the earliest proscenium arch where we look through things like a picture frame. Okay, and notice how the audience sat all around here. So even though the acting was going on here, this was kind of how the courts were set up at the time. Like if you went to go see the king, they'd have people sitting all the way around like that. So I'm imagining they had some action going on down here in the front, but I'm not sure exactly what. Because the proscenium arch, that's where they had all the, that's where the scenery was. So maybe that just showed where they were. This looks like there's a big walkway from the stage down here, the audience. So a lot of interesting things. In Italy, they also had Commedia dell'arte, which I mentioned a few different times before. And that's where traveling players would go from town to town, but they were stock characters. Does anyone remember what stock characters means? Good idea, stock characters? No, a stock character means like they always play the same thing. Like every time you see this person dressed this way, that's the character. If we were to walk in and see somebody that was, hold up. I thought you were going to say, oh no, we do Peter Falk, right? Peter Pan, okay? When you see somebody dressed, okay, Peter Pan, Robin Hood, Batman, right? We know if they're wearing that costume, that's who they're supposed to be. Okay, so that's what a stock character is. And Commedia dell'arte had several stock characters, and they were the ones that didn't really have scripts. They didn't really, they memorized kind of what they were supposed to do, but not the exact words. So, you're the creepy old lech man, and you come in and you want to marry the daughter, and the young lover comes in and wants to, save her from the creepy old lech. And okay, and then you come in and you slip and fall, and make everybody laugh. Okay, go. So they didn't have exact scripts. They had scenes that they put together, and there were some really like, I think we had talked about this guy, Archipelago or Harlequin. Okay, so always played the same kind of a character, and they would wear masks. So really, Commedia dell'arte is really interesting, and they still do this today. Commedia dell'arte characters still exist, but they had no scripts. They memorized storylines called Lassie. So like the little clips. Okay, we're gonna do the thing where the lovers get torn apart. Okay, that was a Lassie. Okay, we're gonna do the thing where the servant comes in and falls, and then you smack him for being lazy. Okay, that was a Lassie. So again, lazy. That word came from those kinds of things that they would do about the lazy servant or whatever it was. So it did influence many playwrights for centuries, including now. Like I said, it still exists. Okay, so that was what was happening in Italy. Over in Spain, they wrote a lot. Remember I said Italy didn't have a whole lot of things written down? Okay, in Spain, they have like 30,000 new plays. Right? It's huge. It's huge. And the plays seem to, really focus on a code of honor, doing what was morally right. And so, the people writing these plays were trying to influence the people that were watching them to be good. And they were also heavily, heavily influenced by the church. Spain has always stayed very heavily influenced by the church. It became almost exclusively Catholic. And then the rest of Europe was kind of fighting against that. We had Protestants and Catholics fighting and stuff like that. Spain did too. They had some internal wars, but they squashed them. Okay, they pretty much kicked out anybody that wasn't Catholic. They were very anti-Jewish, unfortunately, at the time. So, but the fact that everybody, they kept them, I don't say they kept them, they all stayed Catholic. And then all of the plays were also very heavily influenced by the church. All right, so that was Spain. This is Lope de Vega. He wrote like, I don't know, maybe a few thousand of those plays. He wrote a lot of plays that we still have access to. So he was a very big playwright. Then there's the English Renaissance. So we think of Shakespeare. Okay, but there were also people other than Shakespeare. I think I mentioned to you about Christopher Marlowe. Let's talk about Christopher Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe is the one that invented the iambic pentameter, which makes all the lines that go da 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 da. To be or not to be, that is the question. Okay, so that's the iambic pentameter. That's the way that they wrote it. And Christopher Marlowe is the one that developed it. They called it the mighty word. And he was brilliant and he was fantastic. And at the age of 27, he died in a beer brawl. All right, a bar brawl. It's probably over beer, but in a bar brawl, yeah. So, but other writers picked up on it and started writing like that. And one of the reasons that they chose that da 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 was because it was easier for the actors to remember their lines. When they had to kind of, when you memorize things in rhyme, when you memorize a song, right? You sing things, that's why they make all sorts of songs for little kids to learn things. Barney, yes, thank you very much. My kid told me one day he wasn't going to wear his seatbelt anymore. He was 3. And I said, oh, really? Instead of going, what do you mean you're not going to wear your seatbelt? Of course you're going to wear your seatbelt. I thought him out and I said, well, what does Barney say? Buckle up your seatbelt. And he buckles his seatbelt and never had that problem again. I'm like, yay, Barney. Okay. So when we sing things, we tend to remember them better. So the sing-songy kind of verse was also helped the actors memorize their lines. So because you think, and when you look at it, it doesn't always read that way. And that's okay. It's not supposed to read that way. It was kind of just and if you look at how it's written, there are some beautiful things. Shakespeare made up words that were never words before. I remember, the one I can remember is eyeball. Okay, nobody said eyeball before that. Talk about your eye, your eyeball. So, but this was, you know, Christopher Marlowe, Shakespeare, Webster, the English Renaissance, that's what we think of. And we talked about the theaters all over London because they outlawed theater in London. So they had to go across the river and make all the theaters over there. And they'd raise the flag whenever we had a play. We're having a play today. I think of a bait stand, right? We have live shrimp. You know, I don't know, any make fish in here? Anyhow, so, okay. Like, all right. So they raised the flag. Shakespeare died in 1616, and in 1642, so this is again a brief overview of like everything that happened in Europe. Okay. In 1642, there's a civil war broke out about religion. I believe it was Oliver Cromwell. They pretty much killed the king, and theater was made illegal, and it was banned. And so the prince, as they killed King Charles, Prince Charles, ran away to France and hid out there for 15 years or so. And then when he comes back, they don't call it the Renaissance anymore. It's called the Restoration, because Charles II returns and is restored to the throne. Okay, so that's the Restoration. All right, I don't want to go any more after the Restoration, do I? Oh, sure. There's only a few more slides, and then we'll go into the videos. Okay, so the Restoration, basically, like I said, not just the prince went over to France, but like a whole lot of nobility too, because they were afraid that they were going to be executed as well. And again, the religious views were very, very strict and like really, really hard and very anti-Catholic, and some of them were still Catholic. And so they, when they came back, the nobility came back, and they had been exposed to French theater all this time. And French theater was kind of a little bit more risque and much more prevalent. And so when they came back, they brought a lot of that with them. So the Restoration theater, it's a lot of comedy. There's a comedy of manners, there's a comedy of all these different kinds of comedies. And they have, women whose bosoms are being pushed out. And there's a lot of farce in the fact that there's always some sort of mistaken identity, or somebody's having an affair, and you can hear it through the wall, or they think they're having an affair, and what they're really doing is like moving a piece of furniture, and they're like, oh gosh, that's so hard, things like that. And again, there's a lot of sexual innuendos that go on in Restoration comedy. Oh yeah, so there's a comedy of manners that had a lot of witty dialogue, sophisticated and superficial society, and it was really theater for the wealthy. So the nobles are the ones that brought it back, and they're the ones that also enjoyed it. So it was kind of all about them. Okay, quick jumping over to France. Molière. Molière is kind of where they got their idea. And Molière wrote comedies, and he was very heavily influenced by Commedia dell'arte. And he wrote Tartuffe and the Misanthrope. And Tartuffe, I showed you a picture of it before, where the guy is underneath the table listening as the wife is trying to show him that this guy is knowing you, he's coming on to me. And so he's listening under the table as the guy seduces his wife and like pretty much almost has her, spread eagle before he comes out and says, stop. And she's like, ah, well, are you sure you didn't want to wait longer? So Tartuffe wrote a lot of those things. Interesting note about Tartuffe was that he got into a fight with the Cardinal Richelieu, who was there, because they wrote about religion. The guy who was like coming on to the wife was supposed to be a religious person. And so they got really mad at him, and they excommunicated him from the church. So when he died, they wouldn't bury him in hallowed ground. They wanted to bury him. So they buried him like outside of the church cemetery, and his widow like threw a fit and went to the king and all this kind of stuff. So then they unburied it, they exhumed his body and moved it over and buried it in the church. Two burials. So Moliere, he was an interesting guy. They said that he married his younger cousin, so that's kind of weird too. There's a lot of weird things there. Okay. Then we're going all the way down to the 19th century, where that's 1800s, early 1800s, where they did a whole lot of fascination with the occult, Dracula, and all the supernatural and all that stuff was written kind of thing. And that's when they went into melodrama. All right, so now we're going, Uncle Tom's Cabin was the most popular play. Oh, this is something interesting too. The Booth family. The Booth family this is in America. This is during the 1800s. And it's the whole family of actors. And the Edwin Booth was he was the primo actor in melodrama theater in America, and he toured all over the place. And then there was his brother, John Wilkes Booth, the one who assassinated Lincoln. Think about this, because I always wondered, it didn't dawn on me until I was, looking at this one day. He was an actor. Lincoln was assassinated in a theater. Okay, so even if he wasn't in that play, nobody would have questioned what he was doing in there, right? Because he was an actor, he was always there. Like, there you go. Because you think, why could somebody come in there with a gun and they probably thought it was a prop, So there's that. Ta-da. All right. Close that out now. Now we're going back to. Now we're going all the way back to Athens. I brought you all the way up to the 1900s. Now we're going to go back and watch some of these. Okay, good.